The Earth Defense Fleet had been on high alert for weeks, monitoring strange anomalies on the outer rim of the solar system. Every sensor probe sent out came back inconclusive, a humbling reminder of humanity's limited understanding of the vast expanse of space. But when the Crimson Legion arrived, they didn't need to hide their presence. They announced it in the most destructive manner possible. General Samantha Drake stood on the observation deck of the Earth Defense Command, her eyes trained on the massive holographic display before her. The incoming fleet was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. The warships were enormous, darker than the blackness of space itself, glistening with a sinister red hue that seemed to bleed into the void. Their surface shimmered with energy shields that hummed in a language no human had ever heard. And in the center of the formation was their flagship, a colossal vessel that seemed to bend the very fabric of space as it moved closer to Earth. "Are we sure this is real?" Commander Ryu Takahashi, one of Drake's most trusted officers, asked, his voice tight with disbelief. The air in the command center was thick with tension. The Federation had maintained a peace treaty with several alien races, but nothing about this fleet suggested diplomacy. In fact, it felt more like an execution waiting to happen. Drake's gaze never wavered as she turned to face him, her jaw clenched in grim determination. "It's real," she replied, "and we're going to have to do more than talk our way out of this one." Suddenly, the entire planet seemed to hold its breath. The Crimson Legion's warships opened fire, without warning, without a word. The sky above Europe ignited as energy blasts cascaded from their vessels, tearing through Earth's atmosphere like a hot knife through butter. Cities that had once stood as symbols of human achievement were reduced to burning ruins in the blink of an eye. The weapons unleashed by the Crimson Legion were unlike anything Earth had ever seen. The initial shockwaves destabilized gravity in key areas, causing buildings to collapse in on themselves, while devastating energy beams tore through Earth's most fortified military bases with ease. It was a calculated display of destruction, and it sent a singular message: resistance was futile. Drake felt the weight of the situation sink deep into her bones. The enemy was not only technologically superior, but also disciplined, organized, militarily perfected. In the midst of this chaos, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were not just here for conquest. They were here to make an example of Earth, to show the galaxy that even the most promising species had their limits. "Commander, activate the countermeasures," Drake ordered, her voice firm. "We need to mobilize the fleet, now." She couldn't afford hesitation, not even a second of it. The time for diplomacy was long gone, but as she spoke, something unexpected happened, something that made her heart skip a beat. From the midst of the flames and destruction, she saw Earth's defense systems start to activate, far too late, but they were still functioning. Fighter jets, missile batteries, and laser arrays from every corner of the world began to fire on the incoming ships, desperate attempts to push back the invaders. It was humanity's last stand, but it wasn't enough. Then, as if mocking their futile resistance, the flagship of the Crimson Legion unleashed its true power. A beam of pure destruction that tore through Earth's magnetic field, causing massive storms to form in seconds. Oceans rose into towering waves, while winds reached hurricane speeds across continents. The full scale of their power became apparent in that single moment. "They've beaten us, Commander," said Lieutenant Emily Zhang, her face pale as she watched the devastation unfold on her screens. "No," General Drake said sharply, her resolve hardening. "They've underestimated us. Earth doesn't break that easily." Her voice wasn't just a statement, it was a promise. The war for Earth's survival had just begun. As the fires from the first wave of destruction consumed the horizon, General Drake knew one thing with certainty: humanity's fight was far from over. If the Crimson Legion thought they could break Earth with their might, they were in for a surprise. The unyielding human spirit was about to ignite in ways even the Legion couldn't predict. The world may have burned, but humanity wasn't ready to surrender. The devastation caused by the first wave of the Crimson Legion's attack left humanity reeling, but it also sparked something far more dangerous to their enemies: resistance. Earth's leadership, now scrambling to rebuild, came together in a hastily called summit. As world governments collapsed and cities burned, the survivors clung to one undeniable truth: humanity could not and would not give up. General Drake stood at the center of this growing unity, rallying leaders from every nation to face the threat head-on. In the dimly lit war room, Drake reviewed the reports with a hardened expression. They had lost many cities, and their best technologies had proven utterly ineffective against the Legion's overwhelming might. Yet, despite the carnage, something inside her stirred. Humanity had survived far worse. They had outlasted pandemics, political upheaval, and alien encounters. This time, she was sure, they would find a way to prevail. "General Drake, we need a plan, and we need it now," President Charles Wallace said, his voice hoarse from hours of urgent meetings. He was a pragmatic man, and even he was beginning to feel the strain of Earth's crumbling defense. "The Legion is relentless. What can we do?" Drake's eyes flickered over the faces of the leaders in the room. Some were shell-shocked, others hardened, but all had one thing in common: they wanted victory, and they needed her to lead them there. "We need a new approach," Drake said, her voice unwavering. "The military's traditional strategies aren't working. It's time for something unconventional." "Unconventional?" Wallace asked, his brows furrowing. "What do you mean?" Before Drake could answer, a young technician named Maya Brooks stepped forward. A recent graduate of Earth's top universities, Maya had been monitoring the Legion's communications in the background. She was brilliant, but had little formal military experience. Yet she had a way of thinking that was miles ahead of most. "I believe there's a flaw in the Legion's technology," Maya said, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. "I've been analyzing their patterns. Their ship's shields are almost impenetrable, yes, but their energy signature, it's not perfect. There's an anomaly, a weak spot that we might be able to exploit." The room fell silent. "Are you sure about this?" Drake asked, her voice cautious but hopeful. They had no time for false leads. Maya nodded. "Yes, I've been cross-referencing their shield emissions and energy waves. If we can adapt one of Earth's energy weapons to target that specific frequency, we might be able to disable their shields long enough for an assault." Drake's heart quickened. It was a long shot, but it was a chance. "Then let's make it happen," Drake ordered. "Gather the best engineers, the top scientists, everyone who can work on this. We're going to need a miracle to break through." But as the strategy took form, Drake realized that a technological solution wasn't enough. They needed to break the will of the Crimson Legion as well. And for that, Earth would need more than just weapons and strategies. It would need heroes. Across the globe, in hidden corners and underground bunkers, a collection of unlikely heroes began to emerge. There was John Jack Devereux, a former Navy SEAL turned mercenary, who had seen firsthand the horrors of alien warfare. He had fought the Xantorians in a previous conflict, but nothing had prepared him for the sheer brutality of the Crimson Legion. Still, he volunteered to join Drake's team, ready to risk his life for the future of humanity. Then there was Eva Torres, a brilliant hacker who had once been a fugitive on the run, her skills in coding unmatched by anyone on Earth. After narrowly escaping a high-security prison, she was offered a chance at redemption, helping Drake's team break into the Legion's command network. A dangerous mission, but one she couldn't resist. And finally, there was Ethan Juno, a brilliant inventor and engineer who had been working in the shadow of Earth's defense systems, creating cutting-edge technology. Though he had no formal military background, his genius in adapting technology for warfare made him a key player in the upcoming battle. Together, this unlikely team would be humanity's last hope against the Crimson Legion. Drake gathered them in a briefing room later that night, the weight of their mission clear in her eyes. Listen, this won't be easy. The odds are stacked against us, but I've seen what humanity can do when it's pushed to the edge. We fight, we adapt, we outlast, and we'll do it together. The heroes she gathered nodded grimly, understanding the enormity of what lay ahead. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their home, for the future of humanity itself. The resistance had begun. And as long as they breathed, the Crimson Legion would never have Earth. The first few weeks of resistance had been nothing short of chaos. Despite their desperate efforts, humanity's military forces were still reeling from the initial attack. The world's capitals lay in ruins, and the Legion's warships hovered ominously in orbit, their energy shields unwavering. Earth's major cities had been reduced to rubble, and yet, amidst the ashes, the human spirit flickered, refusing to be extinguished. But as General Drake's makeshift task force, comprised of soldiers, scientists, engineers, and hackers, scrambled to develop a way to break through the Legion's defenses, an even more insidious threat began to emerge from within their own ranks. Trust, something once taken for granted, began to erode. It started with small things, a missed transmission, a failure to deliver crucial data. The feeling that someone somewhere was making subtle but catastrophic mistakes. Drake had suspected that there was more to it, but she hadn't been able to prove it, not until that night. In the dim light of the command center, Drake's mind raced through every piece of intelligence gathered so far. They had found the weakness in the Legion's shield, the anomaly in their energy signature that could potentially be exploited, but it was still theoretical. Without precise data, the weapon they had developed could never be tested, and that's when the unsettling truth hit her. She watched the security footage again, this time with an eye toward the smaller details. The interactions of the tech team, the timing of the breaches in the system, the subtle clues that hadn't made sense until now. Someone was feeding the Legion information. The leaks were too consistent, too perfectly timed to be accidental. Drake called a meeting with her most trusted officers, her mind already set on the path ahead. It was time to root out the traitor. Commander Takahashi, take the team and begin questioning everyone who had access to the secure files. I don't care who it is, no one is above suspicion, she ordered, her tone sharp. Takahashi nodded, his jaw tight. He knew the gravity of the situation. Understood, General. We'll get to the bottom of this. Drake knew this would be no simple task. They couldn't afford to lose anyone who was critical to their success. But at the same time, the traitor had to be caught before they caused irreparable damage. Trust was the foundation of this operation, and it was cracking beneath their feet. Hours passed as the investigation unfolded. As Drake moved between various war rooms and communication hubs, the strain of the situation weighed heavily on her shoulders. But she couldn't afford to let the pressure show. Not now. She couldn't let fear creep in. She had seen humanity's ability to survive the impossible. But if the traitor wasn't found soon, survival wouldn't be enough. Then, as the team reviewed another set of encrypted transmissions, the breakthrough came. A single encrypted message was identified as anomalous, originating from a low-level technician who had been present in one of the most secure areas of the base. That was the first clue. But it wasn't until they checked his recent activity logs that they discovered the true extent of the betrayal. The technician had been covertly accessing classified files about the energy signature anomaly and transmitting them at precise intervals, ensuring that each transmission lined up with critical moments in their strategic planning. The traitor was none other than Lieutenant Colton Hayes, a promising young officer who had joined the task force as one of the first to offer his services. His motivations were unclear, but the evidence was damning. Drake was furious. She couldn't afford the luxury of emotional reactions, though. This wasn't just about betrayal, it was about survival. They needed to act fast. Get him, she snapped to Takahashi. I want him alive, but if he resists, end it. It wasn't long before the traitor was captured. Hayes, pale and broken, stood in front of Drake, his eyes darting nervously between the walls of the interrogation room. His hands were bound, and he had no escape. "I didn't have a choice, General," Hayes whispered, his voice weak. "They offered me something I couldn't refuse. They promised I'd be spared when the Legion conquered Earth, that I could live, that I could help build a new order." Drake's eyes hardened. "You betrayed your own people for a promise from monsters. You'd be lucky to be shot on sight for treason, Hayes." Hayes flinched, but Drake's anger was tempered by the growing realization that this betrayal was more than just a personal failure. It was a symptom of something larger. Hayes wasn't the only one who had been seduced by the Legion's promises. The humanity she had been counting on to rally together was being tested in ways she hadn't imagined. As the Legion advanced, it was clear that Earth's greatest enemy wasn't just an alien species. It was the internal fractures that would threaten to tear them apart. "I'll be no good to you dead," Hayes pleaded, his voice cracking. "But I can still help. I know their systems. I can get you in. You need me if you want to stop them." Drake considered his words, the decision weighing heavily on her conscience. She'd lost good people already, and she knew the stakes couldn't get any higher. Earth's forces needed every advantage they could get. She glanced at Takahashi, then back at Hayes. "Help us," Drake said coldly, "and you'll be given a chance to redeem yourself. Fail, and you will answer for your treachery." As the traitor was placed under careful watch, General Drake's thoughts turned to the next steps. The Crimson Legion had already infiltrated humanity's ranks, but now, with their knowledge, Earth had a rare opportunity, an opportunity that could tilt the war in their favor. The battle for Earth had just grown even more dangerous. The traitor, Lieutenant Colton Hayes, had barely escaped execution. His information was too vital, and the prospect of using his insider knowledge to strike back at the Crimson Legion was too tempting to ignore. Under close guard, he was granted an opportunity to redeem himself, but General Drake made it clear that any sign of betrayal would be met with swift justice. It wasn't long before Hayes began to deliver, revealing secrets about the Legion's communication systems, their operational strategies, and even their weak points. Every piece of intelligence he provided was like a spark of hope in a world that had been drowning in darkness. And yet, as valuable as his information was, Drake couldn't shake the nagging feeling that they were still fighting on the edge of a precipice. Their first real success came when Maya Brooks, the brilliant young technician, developed a device that could jam the Legion's communications long enough for Earth's forces to launch a coordinated strike. The device, built using a combination of salvaged Legion tech and Earth's cutting-edge technology, was a risky gamble, but it was the best shot they had. Drake had been skeptical at first. Her trust in Hayes was still fragile, and every plan felt like it could be the one that failed. But when the jamming device was successfully tested in simulations, a quiet surge of hope began to spread through the resistance. The first target was a small, seemingly inconsequential Legion outpost located in the asteroid belt. Their role was to monitor Earth's movements and send back critical information. It was no more than a glorified scout station, but if they could take it out, they would cripple the Legion's ability to gather intel on Earth's movements. It was a small victory, but Drake knew that each one would build into something much larger. The operation was coordinated across multiple fronts, with Earth's remaining forces preparing for a simultaneous strike. Drake's Special Task Force would be the spearhead, and their assault would be the first coordinated attack the Legion had seen since their arrival. As the strike force prepared for launch, tensions were high. Lieutenant Takahashi and his team of elite soldiers were tasked with infiltrating the outpost, while Jack Divereux and Eva Torres would handle the extraction and communications. Ethan Juno's engineering team would ensure that the device Maya had designed was delivered and activated. The day of the mission, Drake stood in front of her team, her eyes scanning each of them in turn. There was no room for failure. This mission wasn't just about defeating an outpost. It was about sending a message to the Crimson Legion. Earth was no longer the passive victim. They were a force to be reckoned with. "We're going in, hard and fast," Drake said, her voice steady and commanding. "This isn't just about us. It's about our families, our future. We do this together, or we don't do it at all." The crew nodded, a silent understanding passing between them. They were united in purpose, bound together by the weight of their shared mission. The operation commenced just after dusk. Under the cover of Earth's night, the fleet of stealth ships made their way to the asteroid belt. Each vessel was cloaked in advanced technology, making it nearly invisible to the Legion's detection systems. They would have only one chance to make it count. The strike force descended on the outpost with surprising speed, catching the Legion's defenders off guard. The first wave of soldiers moved in, taking out the outer defenses with surgical precision. Takahashi and his team, using the jamming device as cover, disabled the communication relays that linked the outpost to the fleet above. Meanwhile, Devereux and Torres handled the extraction, their mission to retrieve valuable data from the outpost's archives. For a few moments, everything seemed to fall into place. But then, just as they were about to withdraw, an unexpected wave of reinforcements arrived. A Legion assault force, more advanced and heavily armed than anything Earth had seen before, suddenly appeared on the horizon. A massive firefight erupted, the clash of alien weapons and Earth's military tech lighting up the cold, desolate expanse of space. It was a test of endurance and ingenuity. Takahashi's team fought valiantly to hold the line, while Devereux and Torres scrambled to extract the data and secure the area. "Come on, let's move," Devereux yelled as they sprinted toward the extraction zone, enemy fire grazing their backs. The tension in the air was palpable. Every second that passed felt like an eternity. Just as they thought they had a chance at escape, the unthinkable happened. The jamming device failed. The Legion's communications network flickered back to life, sending out a distress signal to their fleet. Within moments, a fleet of warships, much larger than anticipated, materialized out of the shadows, making the odds of survival nearly impossible. "We're out of time." Takahashi's voice crackled over the comms. "Fall back, now." The strike force regrouped, knowing they had to fight their way out. But just as the situation seemed hopeless, the unexpected happened. The skies above the outpost suddenly lit up with the flashing silhouettes of Earth's remaining fleet. General Drake had pulled every last resource together, launching a surprise counteroffensive to assist her team in the field. Drake had bet everything on this mission, and now, in the face of overwhelming odds, Earth's forces had found a way to fight back. They weren't just reacting to the Legion's every move anymore. For the first time, they were setting the pace of the war. But the battle was far from over. The Legion was learning, adapting, and preparing for a retaliation that would be even more ruthless. But Earth had shown them something crucial. They could be broken, but they would never be defeated. The surprise victory at the Legion outpost had sent shockwaves through both Earth's resistance and the Crimson Legion. Earth had proven it could strike back, but as General Drake stood in the war room reviewing the aftermath, she knew this was only the beginning. The Legion would retaliate, and their response would be swift and brutal. In the weeks following the attack, Drake focused on consolidating Earth's fractured forces and fortifying the defenses. The jamming device, despite its temporary failure, had proven to be the key to disrupting the Legion's communications. Maya Brooks, working alongside Ethan Juno, began perfecting an upgraded version, one that could not only block the Legion's transmissions, but potentially scramble their systems entirely, leaving them blind and vulnerable for short periods. "We need to strike again," Drake said, her voice low but determined. "We have them on the ropes. We take the fight to them before they can regroup." Commander Takahashi nodded grimly. "But we need to be careful. The Legion's forces are already adapting. They won't fall for the same trick twice. We won't give them the chance, Drake replied. We're going to hit them hard, fast, and in multiple places at once. If they can't predict where we'll strike next, we'll keep them guessing. The plan was daring, to say the least. The mission would require coordination between Earth's remaining military fleets, the resistance forces, and the newly formed covert units. But this time, there would be no singular target. Instead, they would focus on striking key Legion supply lines, neutralizing their reinforcements, and sabotaging their command infrastructure. The goal was to make the Legion's logistical operations untenable. As the fleet prepared for the next offensive, Drake felt a strange mixture of confidence and dread. Confidence because humanity was proving its resilience, but dread because the deeper they went into enemy territory, the higher the stakes became. She couldn't afford to think of this as a series of small victories. It was a war of attrition, and the Crimson Legion had a far greater arsenal at their disposal. Hayes, the former traitor turned reluctant ally, was still on probation, but his insider knowledge of the Legion's systems had become indispensable. He had, however, warned Drake about the full scope of the Legion's plans. "You don't understand," he had said one night, his voice trembling as if haunted by what he had learned during his time with them. "The Legion's true strength lies in their leadership, in their commanders. Their empire isn't just about power, it's about control. They enslave entire species, manipulate them, and they're coming for you next." Drake had listened, but the words lingered in her mind, especially now that the time to take the fight to the heart of the Legion was near. The operation was launched in a coordinated series of waves, each strike timed to coincide with a specific weakness in the Legion's infrastructure. Takahashi led a stealth operation to cripple one of the Legion's mining outposts on a distant moon, while Devereux and Torres took charge of a sabotage mission targeting the Legion's supply routes. Meanwhile, Maya and Ethan worked furiously to deploy the upgraded jamming device, hoping it would cripple the Legion's communications long enough to give Earth's forces a fighting chance. It wasn't long before the Legion realized they were under attack. Their warships, normally coordinated in perfect precision, began to scatter, scrambling to regain control of their ships and systems. But the jamming was working. For the first time in the conflict, Earth's forces had the upper hand. But it wasn't just their technology that made the difference. In the heat of battle, Earth's soldiers fought with a fury and determination that the Legion hadn't anticipated. Every soldier, from the elite units to the tech specialists, understood what was at stake. Every mission was more than just a tactical operation. It was a fight for their homes, their families, and their future. As the days passed, Earth's forces pushed deeper into the Legion's territories, securing small but significant victories. Yet with each victory, the cost grew higher. Casualties mounted, and every success seemed to come with a fresh wave of Legion reinforcements. It was clear they were learning from their mistakes, adapting faster than Earth could keep up. One evening, as Drake stared at the war maps, trying to predict the Legion's next move, she received a transmission that stopped her cold. It was a message from the heart of the Legion's fleet, encrypted but unmistakably human. "General Drake, this is Captain Serena Reyes, formerly of the Earth Defense Fleet. I'm transmitting this from the heart of the Legion's flagship. They're planning something big, something that will change everything. I don't have much time. If you don't act now, Earth will fall." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving Drake with only one chilling thought. Earth's greatest enemy was not just the Legion. They had traitors within their own ranks. Captain Reyes had once been one of Earth's finest commanders. How had she ended up within the Legion? The question hung in the air like a thick fog. As General Drake stood in the war room, contemplating the message, she knew that the coming days would decide Earth's fate. The Crimson Legion might have underestimated humanity's ability to fight, but it was clear they were not going to let up. The war was about to enter its most brutal phase yet, and every move they made from here on out would have far-reaching consequences. The storm was coming, and Earth had to be ready. The message from Captain Serena Reyes had rattled General Drake more than she had expected. Reyes had been one of the brightest stars in Earth's military, a commander respected by both her peers and subordinates. To know that she was now deep within the Legion's ranks, and that she was trying to warn them, only deepened the layers of uncertainty that had begun to cloud Drake's every decision. What had happened to Reyes? What had the Legion done to turn one of Earth's finest commanders against her own people? Drake knew that time was not on their side. The Legion's next move was imminent, and Reyes' warning made it clear that Earth could not afford to sit back and wait for an attack. They needed to act, and quickly. But where would they strike? Every piece of intelligence they had gathered pointed to a significant buildup in the Legion's operations, and yet their objectives remained elusive. Hayes had offered what little insight he could, but even he was in the dark about the Legion's ultimate strategy. The growing sense of urgency in the air was palpable, and Drake could feel the pressure mounting with every passing day. "I need answers," Drake said to Takahashi, her voice hard. "If Reyes is on the inside, we have to figure out what they're planning. We need to find her before they move forward with whatever big operation she warned about. But we also have to be cautious. If we go in too aggressively, we risk exposing our entire operation." Takahashi nodded gravely, understanding the delicate balance they had to maintain. "We'll send in a covert team to track Reyes. But if she's been compromised, we can't trust her until we know for certain what she's telling us is true." The plan was set into motion. A small unit of highly trained operatives, led by Lieutenant Takahashi, was dispatched to infiltrate the Legion's outer territories and search for any sign of Reyes. They had to move quickly, as the Legion's command ship, the Crimson Shadow, was due to leave orbit within a few days. Time was running out, and every second counted. Meanwhile, Earth's forces continued their push, carefully selecting targets that would deal a decisive blow to the Legion's ability to resupply and regroup. Maya Brooks and Ethan Juno worked on perfecting the jamming technology, while Devereux and Torres coordinated several diversionary tactics to distract the Legion from their main objectives. But even with these efforts, there was a growing sense that they were not in control of the war. The enemy seemed to anticipate every move they made, countering them with terrifying precision. It was as if the Legion knew Earth's strategies in advance, like they were being watched. Then, one fateful night, the strike team finally intercepted a coded transmission, a signal they had been waiting for. It was a message from Captain Reyes, encrypted beyond even the standard Legion protocols. With a sense of dread, Drake listened to the message as it filtered through the secure channel. "This is Captain Serena Reyes. I'm with the Legion's main command, aboard the Crimson Shadow. The operation you've been fighting against, it's already in motion. The Legion is planning to deploy a fleet of shockwave generators, devices capable of destabilizing Earth's core. They can wipe out entire continents with a single strike. You have one chance to stop them. Find the Crimson Shadow and disable the generators before they reach Earth." The transmission cut off abruptly, but the gravity of Rey's words hit Drake like a freight train. The Crimson Shadow was the flagship of the Legion's fleet, a behemoth of war, equipped with the most advanced weaponry and technology the Legion had ever developed. If the Legion was planning to destroy Earth with shockwave generators, the consequences would be catastrophic. For the first time since the war began, Drake felt a cold, gnawing fear. If what Reyes said was true, Earth didn't have much time left. "Prepare the fleet," she ordered, her voice colder than ice. "We're going after the Crimson Shadow. This is our one shot." But there was something else in her mind. The message from Reyes was a warning, an important one, but it was also filled with inconsistencies. If Reyes truly had turned against Earth, why would she give them such critical information? Why risk her position, her life, to pass on such a crucial piece of intelligence? It didn't make sense. Could this be another trap? Could she have been working with the Legion all along, manipulating Earth's forces to get them to make a move that would seal their fate. General Drake paced the war room, the weight of the decision heavy on her shoulders. She trusted no one, not now, not even the very people who were fighting alongside her. There were too many unknowns, too many risks, and the stakes had never been higher. "Get me Hayes," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "Now." Within minutes, the former traitor was in front of her, his face pale but his eyes sharp. He knew what was coming. "Do you think Race is telling the truth?" Drake asked bluntly, her eyes narrowing. "Or is this another game from the Legion?" Hayes hesitated, his mind working rapidly. "I don't know, General. But the Crimson Shadow is their flagship. It could be true. The Legion's experiments with shockwave generators have been in the works for years. If they're ready to deploy them now," he trailed off, his voice grim. "Earth doesn't stand a chance." Drake's thoughts spun in 1,000 directions, but one thing was clear: she had no time for doubt. Earth's survival depended on the next move, and she would make it with or without full certainty. The gathering storm of war had arrived, and it was time for humanity to face the ultimate test. The decision had been made. General Drake's face, normally resolute, was shadowed by the gravity of their next mission. The Crimson Shadow, the Legion's flagship, was no longer just a symbol of their overwhelming power. It had become Earth's greatest threat. If Captain Ray's warning was accurate, the Legion's shockwave generators could obliterate entire continents, potentially triggering a cataclysmic event that would destroy Earth's very core. The stakes were no longer about winning small battles. They were about survival. Drake and her fleet had no choice but to launch an all-out assault on the flagship. The objective was clear: infiltrate the Crimson Shadow, disable the shockwave generators, and destroy the ship before it could deploy its deadly weapons. But even as she prepared for the mission, doubts crept into her mind. She could no longer afford the luxury of second-guessing herself, but the risks were immense. The Legion would never allow them to succeed without a fight. The operation was launched in the dead of night, Earth's forces moving swiftly through the shadows of space. Takahashi's elite strike team, bolstered by the latest tech and intelligence, was deployed in a series of stealth transports, designed to avoid detection until the last possible moment. Their mission was simple: infiltrate, disable the generators, and extract before the Legion knew what hit them. But nothing ever went as planned. The Crimson Shadow was an impregnable fortress in space, a warship so massive that it dwarfed even Earth's largest vessels. Its exterior was armored with a rare alloy that was nearly impervious to conventional weaponry. The ship was equipped with a near-perfect defense system, including automated turrets and cloaking technology, and, as they learned too late, the Legion was ready for them. As the strike team approached the Crimson Shadow, Takahashi's shuttle was intercepted by a volley of energy blasts, the sheer force of the attacks shaking the hull. "Brace for impact," Takahashi barked. The shuttle jolted violently, and alarms screamed in the cabin. "We're too close. They've locked onto us," Devereux shouted, his fingers dancing over the control panels, trying desperately to regain control of the failing ship. Takahashi's face was grim. "Get us to the surface. We're not turning back now." The shuttle plummeted toward the Crimson Shadow, its shields barely holding under the relentless assault. Every second felt like an eternity. But despite the damage, they managed to land on the lower docking bay of the flagship, a small success in a mission that was already spiraling into chaos. Once the shuttle doors opened, Takahashi and his team deployed swiftly. The interior of the Crimson Shadow was a maze of metallic corridors, eerily quiet, as though the ship itself was waiting for them. The team moved with military precision, their weapons raised, eyes scanning every corner. They knew the risks. Every step was a potential death sentence, and they couldn't afford to let their guard down. The first sign of danger came in the form of a group of Legion soldiers, heavily armed and on high alert. The team engaged in a brief but fierce firefight, the sound of gunfire echoing through the narrow hallways. Takahashi's team was well trained, and they neutralized the threat quickly, but the noise was sure to alert more of the Legion forces. They couldn't afford any more distractions. "Move," Takahashi ordered, his voice low and urgent. "We've got to reach the control center." They pressed forward, taking out more Legion soldiers as they advanced. It wasn't long before they reached the central generator room. Just one of the shockwave generators was located here. A complex web of wires and conduits stretched across the room, and the hum of the machinery was almost deafening. "I'm setting the charges," said Devereux, his hands working quickly to plant explosives on the generator. But just as they were finishing the setup, the alarms went off. Red lights flashed across the room, and a voice rang out from the intercom. "Warning, intruders detected. All security personnel report to Sector 9. Lockdown procedures initiated." "They've locked us in," Eva Torres shouted. "We're not getting out the way we came in." Takahashi's eyes darted around the room, looking for any possible escape route. The walls were closing in. The mission was already compromised, and now they had only one option left: finish the job, no matter the cost. "Devereux, get the explosives set. Torres, cover the door," Takahashi ordered. "I'll disable the core. We need this ship to go down." But as he approached the core control panel, a figure stepped into the doorway, an officer clad in Legion black, his face obscured by a helmet. "Welcome, Lieutenant Takahashi." The officer's voice was cold, calculated. "I've been expecting you." The words hit Takahashi like a punch to the gut. This was no random officer. This was one of the Legion's high-ranking commanders. "You're too late," the officer continued, smirking. "The shockwave generators are already primed. Even if you destroy this one, the others will still trigger Earth's destruction. You're all dead." Takahashi's heart pounded, but his voice remained steady. "We're not leaving without stopping you." And just as he finished speaking, the rest of his team opened fire, forcing the Legion officer to retreat. But the damage had been done. The Crimson Shadow was now fully aware of their presence, and the countdown to Earth's destruction had already begun. With the explosives set and the generator now deactivated, the team raced against the clock to escape. Every step felt like a countdown to their deaths. As they made their way back to the shuttle bay, Takahashi couldn't shake the feeling that something far worse was waiting for them. The Crimson Shadow had already activated its self-destruct sequence, and the Legion would stop at nothing to ensure Earth's destruction. They had one chance, and it was slipping away fast. The storm had arrived, and this time, it wasn't just Earth's survival that was at stake, it was the fate of the entire galaxy. As Lieutenant Takahashi and his team raced through the cold, metallic corridors of the ship, they could hear the groaning of the hull and the shrill wail of the alarms blaring in every corner. The self-destruct sequence was counting down, and time was no longer a luxury. Each second that passed brought them closer to annihilation. "We've got 5 minutes," Takahashi called out, his voice sharp, urgent. "Move faster." They pushed forward, the sound of their boots pounding against the metal floor echoing through the halls. Behind them, the Crimson Shadow was coming alive with activity. Legion soldiers poured out from every junction, realizing that their ship had been compromised. They couldn't afford to stop for a fight, but the corridors were narrowing, and every turn brought them closer to a confrontation they couldn't win. "We can't outrun them forever," Eva Torres said, her breath coming in heavy gasps as she checked the rear. "We need to find a way to get to the hangar, or we're dead." Devereux, the tech expert, shot a glance at the overhead display. "The hangar's just ahead, but we're not the only ones heading that way. They'll be expecting us." Takahashi's eyes narrowed. He knew they didn't have much time to reach the shuttle bay. There was a simple fact that weighed heavily on his mind. If they didn't escape the Crimson Shadow before it exploded, Earth would not just lose the battle, they would lose the war. The shockwave generators, if activated, would destroy the planet. sending ripples of destruction through the very core of Earth. He didn't dare think about the consequences. Devereaux, disable the hangar's defenses. Torres, you're on point. We break through, no matter what, Takahashi ordered as they rounded the corner leading to the hangar bay. The door was sealed tight, reinforced against the kinds of breaches they had caused so far. Devereaux rushed to the control panel and began typing furiously, his fingers a blur as he bypassed the security systems. It took only moments, but in that time, the sound of approaching Legion forces grew louder. Takahashi could hear the heavy clank of their boots, the harsh whispers of command, and the unmistakable hum of energy weapons charging. "Done," Devereaux said, his voice clipped. The massive door slid open, revealing the hangar bay, a cavernous expanse filled with Legion ships of all sizes, and in the distance their shuttle. But as they stepped into the bay, a figure appeared in the shadows, a tall, imposing figure bathed in the crimson light of the hangar. Captain Serena Reyes. Takahashi froze, his heart pounding. For a moment, all he could do was stare at her, disbelief and anger warring within him. "You're here," he said through clenched teeth. "I didn't think you would be." Reyes stepped forward, her face emotionless, the cold reflection of the crimson shadows lighting flickering off her armor. "You shouldn't have come," she said softly, but her voice carried the weight of something far more complex. "You've sealed your fate." The team braced for a fight, but Reyes raised a hand, signaling them to stop. "There's no time for this. You're too late. The generators are primed. The countdown cannot be stopped now." "Then why are you here?" Takahashi demanded. "Why warn us? You could have stayed hidden. Let us destroy ourselves, but you're here." Rey's eyes flickered with something almost like regret, but it was gone in an instant. "Because it's not the fleet I want destroyed," she replied, her voice lowering, almost too quiet to hear over the chaos of the ship around them. "It's Earth itself." Takahashi's stomach twisted. This wasn't the Serena Reyes he had known. She was lost, consumed by something darker than the Legion, something personal. "Why, Reyes?" Devereaux's voice broke the silence. "Why turn on your people? What did they do to you?" Reyes' gaze softened for a fleeting moment, but then it hardened again, like a door slamming shut. "They didn't do anything. I did this to myself. You have no idea what it's like to be in my position. The choices I had to make, the sacrifices." She reached for something at her waist, and Takahashi's team instinctively drew their weapons, but she wasn't reaching for a gun. Reyes revealed a small glowing device, an EMP detonator. "You can't stop me," she said, her voice tinged with finality. "If I can't make Earth suffer, then no one will. Not even your precious resistance will survive. You've already lost." Takahashi's mind raced. The EMP would disable their technology, everything, including their escape route. They had no time to argue, no time to reason with her. It was either stop her now or die. He lunged, but Reyes was faster. She pressed a button on the detonator, and the world went dark. For a split second, everything around them seemed to freeze, and Takahashi's heart stopped in his chest. But then, something incredible happened. The lights flickered back on. The countdown on the Crimson Shadow's self-destruct system kept ticking, but there was a quiet, almost imperceptible hum in the air. It was the jamming technology. Maya and Ethan had managed to deploy their latest version just in time. The EMP had been neutralized. Rey's eyes widened in disbelief. Impossible. But Takahashi had no time to savor the moment. The Crimson Shadow's hull groaned again, and the countdown was nearing its final moments. Reyes made a desperate move, charging at him with a blinding speed that left him no time to react. But just as she reached him, a shot rang out, and Reyes staggered back, clutching her side. She turned to see Eva Torres, her weapon still smoking from the shot. "I'm sorry, Captain," Torres said quietly, her face a mixture of resolve and sorrow. "But Earth comes first." Reyes fell to the ground, her weapon slipping from her grasp, her eyes locked onto Takahashi's. For a moment, the fight seemed to drain from her. And then, with one final breath, she whispered, "It's not over. The war's just beginning." With no more time to spare, Takahashi shouted, "Move out." The team sprinted toward the shuttle, where they had one final chance to escape. The Crimson Shadow's self-destruct countdown was down to its last seconds as Takahashi's team boarded the shuttle and blasted off into the void. Earth was not out of danger yet, but they had won this battle. The storm was far from over, but humanity had proven that even in the face of annihilation, they would never back down. The fight had only just begun.